nice to be back with y'all. There's always so much to talk about, so I try to narrow things down to things that I think will be interesting for you. So the message that I'm hearing loud and clear this year up until now is about how confusing food changes are. And I get it. I understand that it can be confusing. So I want to clarify some things for you. I want to tell you about how I think about diet and how I go about creating that diet for people. And then hopefully set you on your path with some things to do in individualizing your diet. And that's the key word for me. It's individualizing your diet. Because as you probably know or probably have realized, there are a million different books about the perfect diet out there. And it doesn't go to say that there's anything wrong with them, and that there's not good information in all of them. It's just that you're not all nutritionists. So it's hard to pull out those threads that you need to put them together into something that's perfect for you. And I'm going to keep coming back to that point. A diet is only as good as it is individualized for you. So we've got, right in the whole MS field, we've got buttons to peanuts. We've got Dr. Walls with a modified paleo diet. We've got Dr. Swank and Dr. McDougall with a modified vegetarian diet. So guess what? Somewhere between those two is the perfect diet for you. And let's get into that. So I want to tell you, first of all, how I do it. So when I'm working with people in the clinic, what do? I always, the Walls diet, the Swank diet, the McDougall diet, they're all a good platform to step off of. So there are some really basic commonalities that underline all of those. And the one diet that I absolutely use regularly is the old anti-inflammatory diet that my mentor gave me over 20 years ago. It's still absolutely valid, and it's consistent with all the diets, all the good ones that are out there. So that I look at that anti-inflammatory diet. I look at Peter D'Adamo's blood type diet, because I've seen over the years that it is a wonderful diet, and it's absolutely relevant to the blood types. And you know what he has spent for decades creating, there we go, I've got my tea service. What he has spent for decades meticulously analyzing clinically is now deep entrenched in the science of genomics, the science of the microbiome, the science of nutrition. So it's all super wonderful and valid. So I look at anti-inflammatory, blood type. I'm a big fan of traditional Chinese medicine and the wisdom it brings, and then the Ayurvedic dosha. So both of those are systems of medicine that have helped billions of people over thousands of years. So whenever you get that kind of wisdom, there's exactly that, great wisdom in it. So I pick and choose and watch how people progress with their diets. I think one thing that's really important is to understand what is it that we want from nutrition in the first place. So I would say the first thing you want to think about, actually, we live in a world where the standard American diet, which applies to us Canadians as well as Americans, and unfortunately it's contaminating the rest of the world too, is literally a diet that's killing us. So I don't think you need to go too far with Dr. Google before you find evidence to support that that diet is absolutely killing us. So what do we need? We need to start with a whole new relationship with food, right? It's not fast, it's not cheap, it's, well, you know, tasty is relative. It's about high density nutrition and the fact that every bite counts. So what is it in this bite or this sip that is nourishing my body? Food is medicine. period. That's one of the oldest observations. That quote came from Hippocrates, who lived around 640 AD. So we've been told since well before Christ was born that nutrition is important in healing. We're finally getting it, because the evidence base tells us so, not because thousands and thousands of years of traditional wisdom has told us that. But here we go. So we've got to have a different relationship with food. We've got to think about it differently. I'll never forget a girlfriend of mine. I stopped to pick her up one morning. We were on our way somewhere. And she was sitting at the kitchen table at 8 o'clock in the morning, eating a big, huge green salad. And daughter of a beef farmer, that didn't make sense to me. So I said to her, what? And she said to me back then, the sooner you start to think about food differently, the better your health will be. And it's like, oh, brother, here we are, full circle. So what makes a good breakfast? Toast and jam? No. Let's talk about, my favorite breakfast is, like a big bowl of soup, or some steamed greens with an egg, or steamed greens with some turkey sausage, or, lately I've been trying to eat a more vegetarian diet myself, which is challenging because I've never been a vegetarian before. So nice warm meals, and that brings in the energetics of traditional Chinese medicine, especially if you happen to be in any kind of temperature like I am. Cold weather, you don't want to be adding cold food to your digestive fire. And that's another thing. You want to think of your digestion as a fire. So what are we doing? When it's cold out, we want to feed that fire. We want to honor that. We don't want to put things on it that are going to put that fire out. Sorry, I think I'm wandering here. So we want high density nutrition. Every bite counts. We don't want to do the beautiful North American thing about shame, blame, guilt, give up, right? Oh, crap. I just blew it. To heck with it. I can't do this. This is stupid, whatever we do. So no shame, blame, guilt, or give up. It's about understanding, okay, so that Haagen-Dazs ice cream I just ate probably wasn't my best food decision. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to make the next bite my back on track. So it's not about giving up on a daily or weekly or monthly or seasonally even. It's about from one bite to the next, because there is no such thing as a neutral bite, right? Perfect. Okay, so those are the points I want to make. I do have some little notes here, because when I get going, I tend to forget things. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about that autoimmune anti-inflammatory diet, 20 years old, okay? What are some basics of an anti-inflammatory diet? Well, the first basic of an anti-inflammatory diet is tons of vegetables. Can't eat enough. I always say to people, I challenge you to eat enough vegetables. Now, those of you who are doing the Walls protocol are probably eating enough vegetables, but the rest of us aren't taught to do that. The standard American plate has been historically a vegetable, a starch, and a piece of meat. We got to blow that theory out of the water. So what should your dinner plate look like? Your dinner plate should be whatever your protein is, if that's a piece of fish, or if that's a piece of chicken or turkey, or the occasional piece of red meat, and then 3 vegetables. So, the whole starch thing is a myth, and I hope I haven't just shocked anybody with that, but I think everybody knows that by now, right? We don't need potatoes or rice with every single meal we eat. So that plate with the protein, 3 veg. I'm a very visual person. I like to see color, and I like to, that's how I plan my meals, actually, is, okay, so I've got chicken on my plate. There's always something green, always something green. That's another anti-inflammatory rule. And then from there, so if I've got a piece of salmon, then maybe I'll put cauliflower on one side and squash on the other side. But I've got that lovely palette of color. because the more color you have, the more nutrients you have. So tons of vegetables. I tell people to start at 6 portions a day, which shouldn't be hard to do. You know, if you get a couple with vegetables, how much is a portion? A portion is half a cup. So if we're doing a cup of vegetables, say in a smoothie or even steamed for breakfast, another cup, which is another 2 portions with lunch, another 2 portions with dinner, that's easy peasy. Now you can start building from there. You can get 3 portions with dinner. You can have another portion as snacks. But the one thing for sure is vegetables, and I'm going on record saying this, I suppose, will probably never contribute to inflammatory distress. So that's the first rule of an anti-inflammatory diet. Then we talk about vegetables, and everybody's like, oh, fruits, I mean. Everybody's about, oh, fruit, it's natural, it's natural. The bottom line is sugar is inflammatory. It doesn't matter where it comes from. So when it comes from fruit on a true anti-inflammatory diet, you don't want to be eating more than 2 portions of fruit a day. I know, big adjustment, right? So, and I want you to think about fruit from the perspective of its glycemic index or its sugar content, or how quickly it gets into your bloodstream as sugar. So the darker the fruit, the higher the the lower the glycemic index. So that's what you want. You want a low glycemic index fruit. So dark berries. I say color, high color, right down to about kiwi, you know, and anything after that you want to eat very rarely. I've got to do the banana busting myth here. Everybody's so in love with bananas. It's like crack in our culture, seriously. I call banana the Twinkie of the fruit world. So first of all, wildly toxic because they're so heavily sprayed, and secondly, just sugar, right? People challenge me on that by saying, oh, but the potassium content, I don't know what marketer made that up, but if you eat a medium avocado, you've got 3 times as much potassium as you do in a banana. And if you're eating a nutritionally dense vegetable oriented diet, you don't have to worry about potassium. So fruits, vegetables, grains. Well, we know now scientifically about gluten, and really grains are overeaten in our culture, and also a lot of them, like rice, will have a very low glycemic index. So a very high glycemic index. Anyway, in our house, rice is fast food, like McDonald's is to some people. So if we have rice, you know that we're rushing to do something. But gluten is a non-negotiable now. And I hope there's nobody out there that doesn't get that. So I say to people, if there's nothing you change in your diet, absolutely nothing, then else make it gluten. I just see it so profoundly. And a close second there, of course, is dairy. Now, since we're talking about those proteins that are no-nos, dairy, gluten, we also want to talk about the lectins in legumes. Now, this is especially troubling for people who can favor a more vegetarian diet. And you know, the bottom line is lectins are everywhere. They're almost in every food. And when you get into the blood type diet, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, Dr. D'Adamo actually goes into what are the most detrimental lectins for everybody. So all the different blood types. So I have it open here on another computer. So for example, for common foods to avoid for each blood type that contain harmful lectins. Blood type O, it's wheat, soybean oil, peanut, and kidney bean. Blood type A, it's lima beans, tomatoes, eggplant, and garbanzo beans or chickpeas. For blood type B, it's chicken, corn, soy, and lentils. And for blood type AB, it's chicken, corn, banana, and fava beans. So even from a blood type perspective, if you focus on those. Now, you know, we can get into, from an anti-inflammatory perspective, good fats versus bad fats. I think we know by now that commercially raised animal fats are incredibly inflammatory. What we've learned in the last 8 years or so is that 100% grass-fed meat has a very, very different fat profile. So what do I mean by 100% grass-fed meat? I mean it's pasture-raised and grass-finished, because typically what gets done with animals is they get fed grain the last 6 weeks of their life, or maybe a little bit more, to fatten them up for market. And that will change. That's enough to change the fat profile of that animal. So when you're looking at meat, if you spend your organic dollars on anything, make it meat. You know, I lived on I ate from my father's farm. We did our own meat of every kind: chicken, duck, pheasant, beef, even pork and lamb. But it was a real shock for me to go out into the real world after my parents passed and have to buy meat. Oh my Lord, that's the one thing I won't eat: meat out of a grocery store, period. Like, it has to be, unless nowadays they have a little bit more organic stuff going on. Okay. One other thing, I just want to, so we've talked about vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes. I just want to talk to you about sort of the dirty dozen, what I call the dirty dozen of inflammatory foods. And these are things that are generally held to be inflammatory and are compounded by whether you have a food sensitivity to them. And we're going to get into that in a moment too. So these are eggs. The Walls diet, for example, doesn't include eggs because Dr. Walls herself is intolerant of eggs. And to get her IRB, she needs to do exactly what she did. So does it mean eggs are out for everybody? Not necessarily, but what we do want to do is make sure that you're not sensitive to them. Soy products tend to be very pro-inflammatory, and you see a lot of people that have sensitivities to them. Citrus fruits, so oranges, mandarins, grapefruits, lemons and limes have a paradoxical effect. So lemon and limes are usually fine, once again, unless there's a sensitivity to them. The alkaloids in the nightshade family of vegetables. So those are the nightshade, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers are the main ones. There are some other ones. Alcohol, coffee, chocolate. Yeah, I hate to be a killjoy, but all of those are considered pro-inflammatory. Fried and processed foods, we probably don't need to talk about that. Pork, beef, peanuts, corn products, and more corn products are just absolute nutritional garbage, right? As I don't know that we really actually have organic corn in Canada anymore, but hybridized, GMO'd, you name it, all those things. And of course, last but not least, sugar. And I'm gonna go to bat for sugar in any form. So that's the fundamentals of an anti-inflammatory diet. And once again, we talk about what not to do, but what to do is eat more vegetables, eat more dark berries, find new solutions other than grains. Doesn't mean you're never going to have another piece of toast again, but find a good gluten-free toast that has protein and fiber in every slice, not just straight carbohydrates like the old rice breads used to be. So that's kind of the anti-inflammatory diet. I'm going to step to the side of that a little bit, because I think part of that, and I guess part of personalizing your diet is identifying your own food sensitivities. And this is a tricky conversation because there's not a lot of definitive science here right now. So, in functional medicine, we talk about identifying a system that works for you as a clinician and using that over and over again. And I've done that for the last almost 30 years, I've used the same system of identifying food sensitivities, and it works for me. So there are food allergies, and then there are food sensitivities. Food allergies are you ingest a food, your immune system goes, yikes, what's that? Creates an antibody to that antigen and takes that out of circulation. That's called an allergy. It doesn't cover sensitivities and intolerances at all. So what's important is to work with somebody who finds other ways to test sensitivities. And these are dynamic things that, yes, there will be some level of fixed sensitivity always, but they will change too. As you sort of lay off them, they'll be less reactive to you. Think about food sensitivities as inflammation in the body, really. So that's what they do. They irritate the body enough that it puts it into an inflammatory state. And whenever you're in an inflammatory state, you're going to be aggravating all things related to MS and anything really. Could be hormone balance, could be, MS, could be, and the two aren't mutually exclusive, so MS might be the diagnosis, but what's really going on for you is a different thing, and we want to take inflammation out of the picture across the board. So when I'm talking about the blood type diet, I really encourage you to take a look at it because, like I said, it's been around forever, and it's now completely validated in the science. I think Peter D'Adamo was somewhat of a genius himself. So what are we talking about here? So blood type A, blood type O, A, B, etc. Do you know your blood type? I'm always surprised at how many people actually don't know their blood type. So that's the first thing to find out. And what you'll see as you get into his work, and I will, I'm seeing all these lovely little red blushing faces like, oh my God, I don't even know my blood type. I always love it when I ask my patients about their kids, what's his blood type? And mothers go into this wild guilt trip about not knowing what blood type their kids are. But anyway, so a blood type A, for example, I am the poster child for a blood type A. I just realized how red the base of my hands are. That's because I'm holding on to my cup of tea here. So a blood type A has a weaker digestive fire, has a weaker digestive system, tends to have a lot of gut stuff, and as such doesn't do as well on an animal protein diet. So the quintessential diet for a blood type A is a vegetarian diet. And I had this epiphany in January when I was down in Mexico, and I said to Mike, that's it, when am I going to learn? I'm going to start doing a more vegetarian-based diet. Now, I did just have fish for dinner, but I am doing a lot of good stuff with that, and I'm surprised. I'm really presently, I don't know why I'm surprised, but I'm reminding myself of exactly how important that is. So the blood type A is best on a more vegetarian diet. The blood type O, which is the most common blood type. People say, I don't know, I've got the most common blood type. So blood type O's have a more robust digestive function, and as such are better doing some animal meat. Peter D'Adamo's book is Eat Right for Your Type. I would highly recommend it as a good read. You can get all kinds of diet charts and stuff online for that. Just Google, diet plan for blood type O or A or whatever. I just downloaded the book from Audible. I couldn't find my paper copy anymore. That's my bookshelf over there in case you were wondering what I was looking at. But I find a lot of goodness in that. What kind of parallels the blood type diet are the Ayurvedic doshas. And I don't know, does anybody out there, are you aware of the Ayurvedic doshas? So Ayurvedic medicine, which is the medicine of Southeast Asia. It is, there are three doshas. There's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and they all have very different digestive function. And it's that digestive function, of course, that that drives the ideal diet. So once again, I'm a poster child for Vata. So it's all about honoring the digestive function and the foods that are consistent with that for the Vata diet. The Kapha is typically blonde, blue eyes, maybe more voluptuous in size and shape. They have a very slow digestive system. So, you know, there are certain rules that would apply to that. And I would have to get my books out for Pitta because I see so much Vata and Kapha that I couldn't tell you about Pitta right now. So we've talked about the inflammatory diet. We've talked about blood type diet. We've talked about the Ayurvedic doshas. And then, you know, traditional Chinese medicine, you know, what can I say? Like I said, it's a system of medicine that's helped billions of people over thousands of years. You know, it just rings true every time. So what the big thing for me is the energetics of food, right? You don't want to be eating cold food in cold weather. What does that mean? Raw food is cold. So if you live anywhere where it's below zero right now, you don't want to be eating raw food after lunch. You want to be eating stuff that is digestively warm. So crock pots, soups, get them out. Tis the season. Tis the crock pot season. There are also herbs that will help to warm food up, like cinnamon, like ginger, like pepper. So, you know, we can take a cold, energetically cold food and warm it up by adding different spices to it too. But all of these things are ways to create a diet that is, sorry, I just got distracted by Sandra saying the daffodils are blooming in Victoria. Thanks. Anyway, you want to be able to take whatever platform it is you're working with, whether it's Swank, whether it's McDougall, whether it's Walls, and then you want to create a diet that's for you. Dr. Walls has been incredible in giving us the diet that worked for her. So start that as a platform and then start pulling in these threads that will make it your own diet, because it's going to change over time too, because it's a moving target. Your body will constantly be changing. Therefore, how you feed it and the nutrients it needs will constantly be changing. A question I often get that I just want to share it with you too is people who say to me, you know, they've eaten the standard American diet forever and they've, I guess, consistently felt crappy but didn't really realize it for decades. And when they start to change their diet, they might have a bit of a detox reaction and then they start feeling better. And then maybe it's Super Bowl, so they decide to have pizza and wings. And then they say to me, oh my God, I feel so much worse now when I eat stuff that I used to eat than I did before. Why is that? What's happening? You know, what's going on with my body? So I use the analogy of a bucket of muddy water, right? So if you're throwing handfuls of mud into a bucket of muddy water, you're not going to notice a difference. So think of that as you're eating the standard American diet, you're throwing more crap into that, you don't notice it. You don't notice how much less energy you have, or how you're not sleeping, or, you know, how heavy your legs feel, or whatever, until you start to clean that diet up. So now you've got a bucket of clean water. So when you throw a handful of mud into that bucket of clean water, you will notice it right away. Thanks, Kelly. I like that analogy too. And I got to give credit where credit's due. That comes from my husband and sidekick, Mike. Okay, so that's how I personalize diets for people. And I'm just looking to see here if there's anything that I've missed. Do you guys have any questions for me? Let me see. Are there any questions? Jen, you look awesome, Teri. Thanks, Jen. Okay. So I don't see any questions here.
you want to talk about not necessarily what to eat, but when to eat and how to
Oh, good question. I told you he's my sidekick, eh? That's living with a naturopath for 22 years. That's what it'll do to you. So Mike's comment was talk about how to eat
and when to eat.
And when to eat. Okay, so I just want to address Jamie, who just said, what would you eat to stay flare-free? So everything that I just said, Jamie, lots of vegetables, get the grains out. So we want to bring the inflammation down, right? So what did you just ask? You asked what to eat and how to, no, when to eat and how to eat. Great question. So when to eat? You know, that's really a good question, because it can come down to what else is going on for you. So you'll hear me say all the time, MS is the diagnosis, but what's your primary picture and what's your secondary picture? So if your secondary picture happens to be blood sugar instability, then you'll probably need to eat a little more frequently until you get that under control. But how to eat is super important, because eating is a parasympathetic function. So for those of you who don't understand the word sympathetic and parasympathetic, that's our autonomic nervous system. So that's the sympathetic is the fight or flight. It's the get away from the saber-toothed tiger. It's in that state, our body doesn't digest. It shuts digestion down. The eating is a parasympathetic or a relaxation function. So running through the drive-through, eating standing up, eating at your desk while you're working. Wrong answer, okay? When you eat, you want to stop, close your eyes. I say to people, give thanks. I don't care who you thank. You can thank God. You can thank the farmer that grew your food. You can thank your husband for preparing it, whoever you thank. But just stop, take a deep breath, because that's going to switch your body into the parasympathetic, and then commence to eat. And slowly. And if you're one of these people who say, oh, I eat quickly, then here's a little trick for you. Take a bite, put your fork down, chew that bite, pick your fork back up, and take your next bite. It's all about training, right? It's all about learning how to do things properly. Chewing, we don't chew, we kind of chomp and swallow. So I encourage people to chew and chew and chew, and just when you think you've chewed enough, chew it 10 more times. Sandra, thanks for reminding me about intermittent fasting. Fasting itself is an interesting concept, and it goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years too. And long before, as functional practitioners, we got onto the intermittent fasting thing. I used to fast 1 day a week. I used to fast on Mondays. I didn't eat. I drank lots of fluids, and I felt great, because your digestion is not, it doesn't have to work, right? There's no food, good or bad food, to cause inflammation. So it was a wonderful thing. So intermittent fasting is simply not eating after you eat dinner. And another good question from Emily. Somebody here, I think, said eating after dinner. So it's never good. Bedtime snacks, never good. Never good. Okay? So intermittent fasting after dinner, that's it, for 14 or 16 hours. So, the ideal intermittent fasting is 2 meals a day. A nice big meal at 10 o'clock and a nice big meal at 4 to 5 o'clock. Is that how you do it, Sandra, with your intermittent fasting? I know Sandra's a big Teri Wall's follower. Okay, so lots of questions here. Actually, intermittent fasting is good for more than some of us. So intermittent fasting, reducing that digestive load, not eating before bed, is good for all of us. It's great for brain function too. Jamie's asking, can egg yolk heal your myelin sheath? I don't know, can it? What is egg yolk? Egg yolk is full of nutrients. It's full of good fats. Perhaps that's where that concept comes from. Emily, is it best not to drink before, during, and after while eating? Yes, of course. So what are we doing when, you know, we sit and chug glasses of water while we're eating dinner? We're just diluting our digestive enzymes. So you want to keep that, think about what I was saying about the digestive fire. We want to keep that digestive fire robust. So it's like throwing a bucket of water on that digestive fire. It's just not going to be burning well. I know my own naturopath, who's one of the big smarty pants down in the United States, who's been a wonderful mentor of mine since 1997. When you visit his home, and he's very generous, he always invites you into his home when you're in the hood, and they don't serve anything, any beverages at all, from about half an hour before dinner until about a half an hour after dinner. There are no liquids on the table, which I know goes against what a lot of people think, but you know, maybe a small glass of water just to take sips to wash things down, but I wouldn't do anything more than that.
Sandra wins the prize for most questions.
She does.
What's your opinion on beans, chickpeas, and lentils?
So beans, chickpeas, and lentils. So we were talking about legumes earlier, right? And we were talking about the lectins. So the big thing in the legume world is lectins. And I was like a dog with a bone on lectins when I first got involved with the functional medicine people. You know, what was that? That was over 10 years ago now, 12 years ago. But, and it was funny because I was never getting a good answer. And I'm thinking I'm getting there now after not dropping that bone. But lectins are on a lot of foods. So I think the best way to deal with lectins is to follow what Dr. D'Adamo says in his blood type diet, which specifies what's better and worse for different blood types. Sorry, I'm just unlocking my computer here so I can remind y'all. So the lectins that the blood type O's should avoid are specifically the lectins on wheat, soybean oil, peanuts, and kidney beans. And on blood type A, lima beans, tomatoes, eggplant, and garbanzo beans. So really, Sandra, I would say the next step for you probably is to pick up Dr. D'Adamo's book, because you've done such wonderful things with Dr. Wall's protocol that now it's time to personalize again, eh?
Sandra wants to know your opinion on the necessity of sprouting raw nuts.
And that's a great question. So I don't know if you guys can hear Mike there, but Sandra has asked about sprouting raw nuts. So what does sprouting anything do? It brings it back to life. So remember I was talking about high density nutrition? That's taking something that's dormant, so moderately good for you, and turning it into a nutritional powerhouse. So you're, especially in grains and seeds and things, like you just increase the protein of that exponentially. So yes, and it doesn't take much. I mean, we generally put a little jar of almonds in some water in the fridge, and you know, in like 2 days they've already sprouted. What else do we sprout? We haven't sprouted for a while. We used to sprout quite consistently broccoli seeds, and I see Sandra saying, so Sandra, back to the intermittent fasting thing, is sharing with us that she eats 2 meals a day, around 11-ish and around 6-ish. So 10 to 4 or 5 or 11 to 6, but you find that very, very easily happens with intermittent fasting, that you only really need 2 good meals a day. Okay.
Kelly's interested in hearing more about sprouting food question. Also, what are your thoughts on kombucha for the health and microbiome? Of
course, of course. So with all the, with all the research on the microbiome, of course, let's turn our food into something that actually nurtures the microbiome. So we know we can supplement probiotics, and we probably should because we all have autoimmune conditions, right? But let's make the most out of our diet. And I got to tell you, I've got some great patients who have pretty advanced autoimmune stuff, and they now manage the microbiome with the food they ferment or culture. So take a look at websites like Cultures for Life, or there's a company out there called masontops.com, and they've made the whole concept of fermenting food super incredibly easy. It's just it's sort of a silicone lid that you put inside a mason jar ring, and you can ferment just like one mason jar at a time. It's brilliant, and it never goes bad. So back to your question, Kelly, kombucha is a fermented beverage, right? So of course that's lovely. You can ferment anything. I have one patient with Hashimoto's, and she lives with her sister, who is also a patient who doesn't have Hashimoto's, and she said to me the other day, thanks. She said, my sister now is fermenting everything. Our fridge looks like a science experiment. Everything's in a jar with a date label on it. So you can literally ferment everything. But check out those two websites I gave you. MasonTops.com makes it easy to do on your kitchen counter, and Cultures for Life. And I'm sure there's other, just Google culturing food. Okay. Hi, Emily. I found out I'm a type A. Well, guess what, honey? You can do lots of Googling now. So, not garbanzo beans. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Is the video freezing for anyone else? I hope it's not freezing. That would be my rural internet connection. And Mike says he's working on it. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground. The main message I want to leave you with is don't get frustrated with nutrition. Don't give up, because it is an unraveling ball of thread for you. There are a lot of things that contribute to the ideal diet for you. They include whatever anti-inflammatory diet you're looking at. They include your blood type. They include, Ayurvedic traditional Asian wisdom. And at the end of the day, it's an incredibly healing thing. So keep up the good work. Don't beat yourself up when you do something crazy like you probably all did yesterday on Super Bowl Sunday. Just say, okay, I get it, not so great. Next bite is going to be great. You can continue to leave me questions, and I will happily continue to answer them. And it's great to be back on our Facebook Lives. So watch next Monday. Don't know what I'm going to do yet, but you can actually send me some ideas if you'd like. Not that I'm lacking for ideas, but take a look at or put it on your calendar for next Monday at 7 o'clock. See you then.